Dr. Thompson will examine healthcare, highlight important environmental issues, and look at what's hot in science and technology and the next wave of emerging diseases and health trends. So this and every Wednesday, join us 8 to 9 p.m. here in BFM 99.9 because your health matters.
People's Pharmacy for all your pharmaceutical, skin, and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Call them today at 784-456-1170. People's Pharmacy also stock vitamins and supplements, personal care items, toiletries, children and adult pampers, and much, much more. And of course, get your prescriptions filled by a friendly and professional pharmacist. People's Pharmacy. Come in today and let us serve you.
Good evening. Good evening to you once again. This is Your Health Matters with Dr. Gerald Thompson. It's always a pleasure being here with you Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. You know, I said I've become conscious of the fact that a number of persons who I met in England said, "Oh, you know, we love your program. We can't stay up for your program because your program is coming on sometime around 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's a pity." But you know, with electronics today, what they did say is that, "Oh, but we look at it the next day. We look at it the next day." But I'm also conscious of a lot of people are listening by radio. So it's not being recorded, let's say, during a live stream or so in those electronic data. You know, that isn't going to pick up who is tuning in on radio, who's getting signal from the antenna up at Mount St. Andrews. You know what I mean? Come out. But this evening is a topic that I've spoken about several times before, but I must talk about this, and it's a topic on dengue. And, you know, a lot of people may not quite understand what is taking place in relation to dengue. And it's important to know. And I want to say, whether you have a headache, some severe muscle aches, joint pains, and a rash on your body, those are the cardinal symptoms and signs of dengue. But to be truthful, a number of other viruses may look and actually produce the same type of thing. Right now, in the Americas, there are over 11 million cases of dengue in this year, 2024. This is a massive outbreak, 11 million cases. In other words, from a statistical point of view, that's 1,200 cases for every 100,000. In other words, 1.2% of the hemispheric population has developed or has experienced dengue this year. Now, truthfully, there ain't much dengue in Canada, has 30 million. There ain't much dengue in northern states, Montana and so. But that means that in the South Americas and the Caribbean, there are a lot more people who have been coming down with dengue. Brazil is one of those places. Nicaragua is another place that's often wet. Panama, notorious. Let me just go into a little bit of history. That dengue is really one of those viruses. We talk about the other viruses because dengue belongs to a same family of viruses such as yellow fever. Have you heard of yellow fever before? Have you heard of Zika? Have you heard of chikungunya? Yes, of course. But there are some other viruses. Have you heard of West Nile virus? West Nile virus just is causing a major problem, not so much in the south, but in northern United States, and is really causing a lot of problems up there. West Nile virus. I want everybody to be to note that. There is another virus, OV, called Oropucho virus. I apologize. Let me apologize. Oropucho virus. This is making outbursts in New Jersey and those sort of places. So this family of viruses, whether yellow fever, dengue, whether it is Zika or chikungunya, they're not nice. But I want to say that dengue is probably the worst of the lot. Dengue is well, I'll come back to that. And these viruses are all transmitted by some form of mosquito. And usually there are two types of mosquitoes that can transmit. In our area, there's a mosquito called the Aedes aegypti, as like Egypt, but we say aegypti, the Aedes aegypti mosquito. But in Florida and in more, well, those Western countries, Florida and Western states, Texas and Louisiana and Mexico, there is another mosquito called Aedes albopictus. I'm sorry again, I bet, but Aedes aegypti, Aedes albopictus. And guess what? These two viruses have learned and evolved in terms of how to transmit the dengue virus. And of course, it's simple that someone who has dengue, the mosquito lands on them, sucks their blood, and sucks up the virus that is floating around in the blood. Then the same night, because these mosquitoes feed on multiple people, they would go and land on someone else. Maybe someone in the same house, maybe someone in the house next door. The virus isn't gonna just stay in the blood. It travels to the mosquito's salivary gland. And the mosquito, when it bites you, it has to throw some ketchup and some seasoning on your skin and inside the blood in order to make the blood not clot inside its long nose. So it uses its salivary glands to produce this liquid that will help to stop the blood from clotting. And it needs the blood so that it can feed its young mosquitoes that's inside of it. You know what I'm saying? Kamal? So the strangest thing is that the mosquito, first of all, injects through its long nose, that spiky nose that's going to pierce through your skin. It basically releases saliva that has the virus in it. And that's how you get the virus. It picks up the virus from someone who has dengue, someone who is suffering from dengue. The virus inside the mosquito now moves over to the salivary glands of the mosquito. And when it bites somebody else, it releases the virus into that person so that it now travels into the blood. And within a matter of a few days, 4 or 5 days, the person starts to get dengue. So this deadly disease, right, of dengue, and also those of yellow fever, malaria, were the reasons why the Panama Canal, which was being built in 1888 by the French. The French were the ones who were first looking to build the Panama Canal. And listen, 20,000 people died from yellow fever, from malaria, and from dengue, because at the time they didn't know that viruses exist. They did not know that the mosquito was the cause of these diseases. As a matter of fact, in the hospitals, you know what they used to do? They used to open up the windows. They used to bring in plants. And in the bottom of the plant, they used to have dishes and push water into dishes to keep the plants alive, because they thought that dengue, yellow fever, and those diseases was caused by bad air. Bad air. So if you open up the windows and you allow the fresh air to come in, and you had plants sitting in water to make them grow and look pretty, then maybe that might improve the air. But what was really taking place inside the bottom of the pots? Mosquitoes were breeding. Mosquitoes were breeding outside of the hospital and flying through the open windows. And as a result, people in the hospitals didn't get better. You know, they didn't know viruses existed. Believe it or not, viruses were only really discovered in the 20th in the 20th century, around 1950, 1915 across there. Now, I'm saying all this to say that the French had to close down the Panama Canal. And then the Americans came in and did some experiments and found out that it was the mosquitoes. So what they did, they took out all the plants, they closed up all the windows, and they started to drain all the wet areas around, and yellow fever, dengue, and those sort of things came down. Great experiment, you know, and a lot of people are credited for that, but a Cuban physician and several other individuals are credited. But that's not what I'm going to focus on today, right? The important thing is for you to understand that these viruses are different. Yellow fever is a virus that's characterized by attacking predominantly your liver. And so it causes jaundice. It causes you to become yellow. And it causes the liver to fail, causes organ failure, and so on. Whereas dengue is a fever that presents, when it's severe, mainly with joint pains, muscle pains, not so much liver problems, but joint pains and muscle pain. But you would tell me, but boy, chikungunya does that too? Yes, it does. And Zika does a bit of that too? Yes, it does. So we often need blood tests to tell which virus is really affecting you. And this is where I start this evening talking about dengue fever. So dengue fever is the most prevalent mosquito-borne viral illness in humans today. And in the past, we used to classify dengue in many different ways. We used to talk about it in such a complex way. It used to confuse people. And I want to simplify it today. But the mosquitoes that spread dengue, right, are found throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. And if you're able to protect yourself in the summer or the rainy season, you may avoid catching dengue. I'm telling you, dengue is an easy thing to catch. There's mosquitoes all over the place. I even feel even the air conditioned room, I'm sure mosquitoes inside here, inside the studio, you know? And we have to be careful about what we wear. We have to be wearing loose fitting, long sleeve clothes, long sleeve pants. Look at me. I have on a short sleeve pants. But I could imagine in the summer, it's hard with all this heat. Come on, can you wear long sleeve shirts? It's hard. But boy, long sleeve shirts are the best. I'm definitely long sleeve pants instead of shorts. And then dumping out any standing water you may have, barrels, all these kind of things. Even a bottle cork, a rum bottle cork that's standing up can have enough water in it to breed mosquitoes. Now, dengue fever, right, can cause a fever of up to 104 degrees. Matter of fact, it can go even higher. And any of the following symptoms you could be having: dengue, headaches, then muscle aches, bone aches, or joint pains. Just aches, muscles, bone, or joints. You can have nausea, a feeling as if you want to vomit, or actually vomiting. And then pain behind the eyes. Pain behind the eyes. It's a very common type of symptom. I ain't talking about headaches is headaches. I'm talking about pain behind your eyes, to the back of your eyes. And then swollen glands, and then a rash. Some people develop a kind of a rash. It's hard to see the rash in people of color, black people. But Spanish and other individuals is much easier to see, of course. So most people recover from dengue within a week or so. And in some cases, symptoms may worsen or become life-threatening. And if it does, this is what we call severe dengue. So about 4 or 5 years ago, because we used to classify dengue in many different ways, they came up with a much simpler classification of dengue. And I want everybody to listen very carefully. There is dengue fever without any warning signs, dengue fever with warning signs, and the third classification is severe dengue. Now listen to me carefully. You do not want to have severe dengue. You do not want to have severe dengue. Severe dengue is a life-threatening emergency that needs not just hospitalization, it requires the intensive care unit. And so we want to know, do you have the warning signs for going on to severe dengue? Let me start again. Most people have mild dengue. Mosquito bite you. 5 days later, you start to have what I just mentioned to you: headaches, pain behind your eye, pain in your muscles, your bone, or your joints. You may have nausea. Feels you want to vomit, like you're on a boat and you want to. You can actually vomit. Then you can also have swollen glands, or you can have a rash on your skin. Simple. And guess what? As we said, in about 10 days, it's all gone. You recover. But a certain amount of persons, depending, will go on to severe dengue, especially people with underlying illnesses. You know that come out? You know, now, the warning signs for dengue fever. What are the warning signs which can lead to a life-threatening emergency? These warning signs can develop quickly. And the warning signs are usually begin about 2 days after the fever goes. You'll be having fever 104, and then the fever drops. The fever drops. Fever goes away. But a day after, you start to have these warning signs. In other words, the fever will give you a false impression that the dengue disease itself has gone away, but you're now slipping into a severe phase, and these are warning signs. Remember I said that dengue could make you feel nauseous and vomiting. Well, what if it also starts causing you to have stomach pain? Stomach pain come out. Right in the pit of your stomach, you start having some stomach pain, like indigestion, stomach pain, as if you have an ulcer or something so. Pain in your stomach. And then the vomiting that starts after ain't just nausea with you vomit up your food. It is persistent vomiting. You're vomiting repeatedly. You're vomiting repeatedly. You're vomiting repeatedly. And then you notice you start to bleed. Bleeding from your gums and from your nose. Bleeding from your urine. Now your urine goes red. Or bleeding from your back passage. Or the vomit itself you're bringing up, you notice blood inside that vomit too. I was bleeding. Imagine that, bleeding from your nose, bleeding from your urine, bleeding from your stool, on your stool, and vomiting up blood. My gosh. You know, you've never seen that before. But if you start then having bleeding from your skin, a cut or something so, that's not good. Or if you're light skin, you're bleeding underneath your skin. That's not nice. You start bruising easily. And then worst of all, if you start having difficulty breathing, in other words, are your lungs beginning to fill up with fluid? And are you feeling tired and fatigued? Are you feeling irritable and restless, as if you're having difficulty opening your eyes and so? These are some of the warning signs. These warning signs, you know what they say? Get to a doctor, get to a hospital. And if you get to a doctor and the doctor say, take 2 tablets and call me in the morning, you know you should head to the casualty yourself. I gotta say this, don't bother with the doctor. Go to the casualty hospital, because these warning signs are very serious. Now, so what I've said to you there is that dengue fever has a certain amount of symptoms, and I repeat them one more time: headaches, pain behind your eyes, feeling nausea, some simple vomiting. You bring back up your food, you know, but you vomit once and you're feeling a little better after that. And then aches, muscle aches, your pain, joint, muscle, you know what I mean? Bone. And then you're having those kind of symptoms, feeling a little fatigue. You will typically recover. But when you start having, right, these other symptoms, persistent vomiting, the vomiting ain't stopping, fluid, you're having shortness of breath because fluid is building up in your lungs. You start having bleeding from your mouth. You bite your lip or from your gums. You start having bleeding from inside your urine. There's blood inside your stool. You go to the bathroom and you do a number 2. But when you get up, you see some, as if blood is there too. That's not nice, you know? And then worst of all is if you're bleeding from your skin. What we often worried about too is whether you start feeling tired. You got to be in bed. You're restless. You're lethargic. Lethargic means you ain't quite with it. You know, you're in and out, right? And we sometimes get worried if a doctor examines you, find your liver's enlarged or anything like that. But some blood tests that need to be done. If they find that your platelet, one of the components of your blood, remember your blood has in white blood, red blood, and it has these platelets. If your platelet count is low, then let me tell you something. You are at risk of bleeding. The platelets help to stop you from bleeding from your mouth, your urine, your stool, from your skin. And that's the reason why you bleed. You may be going into severe dengue. Those are the warning signs. Get your tail to the hospital. Am I able to say that on radio? Get your tail to the hospital, to the casualty. You know, go to the clinic, go to the nurse and tell them, Dr. Thompson say, I should go to the hospital. You understand? Because that's what really would save your life. Now, with severe dengue, we make a diagnosis severe dengue when your body seems to be going into shock. When fluid seems to be accumulating in your lungs, because that's what dengue does in its severe cases. It makes you short of breath because fluid is building up around your lungs, preventing you from breathing properly. If the bleeding is really bad, you understand? Severe bleeding, and some blood tests that we can do, will help to make a diagnosis. One of the worst things out is seeing somebody with dengue start to go into confusion. You don't want a dengue patient to become unconscious. It can mean that bleeding is taking place inside their brain. You understand? This is severe dengue. Now, I've seen this. I have seen these cases. They're not nice. We've lost in 2020, we lost about 10, 12 persons to dengue, right? They died. And what did I say earlier on? The 11 million cases. But guess what? There's also this year going to be over 100,000 persons who died from dengue. You know? Brazil, Nicaragua, all those places notorious for having deaths. So it's important to know this. So severe dengue is a medical emergency, and you need to get some help immediately if you or your family member has any of those symptoms. Remember the warning signs: stomach pains or tenderness, vomiting. And when I say persistent vomiting, you know, it doesn't have to be vomiting every 10 minutes. It could be 3 times in 24 hours. 3 times in 24 hours is called persistent vomiting. You know, sometimes you eat some food and it's bad food and you vomit once and you feel better. That's not persistent vomiting. And clearly, if you're vomiting, you're wrenching your stomach out and you're vomiting 15, 20 times, that's also persistent vomiting. But The first stage of persistent vomiting 3 times in 24 hours. And if you're bleeding from the gum, urine, stool, anywhere like that, you know, and especially if there's vomiting, if you're vomiting and there's blood in the vomit, these are the warning signs that this could get very bad. Now, we're going to take a break. For those who recognize the sponsor, we come back and wrap this up. We'll open up the lines, get some questions and so forth if necessary.
And People's Pharmacy for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Call them today at 784-456-1170. People's Pharmacy also stock vitamins and supplements, personal care items, toiletries, children and adult pampers, and much, much more. And of course, get your prescriptions filled by a friendly and professional pharmacist. People's Pharmacy. Come in today and let us serve you.
Thank you very much. And we're back. Now, whether it's just mild dengue or it's dengue that's showing warning signs, very interesting. St. Vincent is one of the first islands in the Caribbean several years ago, about 3 years ago, for the Ministry of Health to have approved the use of the papaya leaf as a treatment. The papaya leaf has in many different substances. It has in something called papain, which is a meat tenderizer. But it also contains another substance called carpain, C-R-P-A-I-N-E, carpain. And this substance, it helps to stabilize your blood platelets. What's happening in dengue is that the virus is causing certain reactions that is destroying your blood platelets. Those substances in your blood that helps you to quickly clot blood if you're bleeding. You know, we have the risk of bleeding all the time. We bite our tongue, we bite our lip. When we eat food, the yams and the dasheen and a bone, the fish bone, you know, that we eat, and the chicken bone that we crunch in, the Kentucky chicken bone that we crunch in there, we come out, bruises our gums sometimes, but healing processes take place quickly, and platelets will make sure we don't bleed. That happens, you know. But if your platelets are destroyed, you can start to bleed from all kind of places. And this carpain, C-R-P-I-N, stabilizes the platelets, and it also stabilizes other membranes in your body. And now they've not determined whether it's the young papaya leaf or the older papaya leaf that really works. I tell you a story. I remember I traveled once and I came back to St. Vincent and I knew I had chikungunya. And I was driving my car and I said, oh boy. And I stopped off at a road coming along Fair Hall after seeing a papaya tree. And I took out I broke off a greeny cedar stick and knocked down a papaya leaf and took it home, and I boiled the papaya leaf and I drink it. And the next morning, I'll tell you something, the pain in the back of my neck that was killing me was all gone. I couldn't believe it. So I'm a believer. Yes, I'm a believer, right? So I laugh at that episode. But because people had asked me about that before, I tell you the truth, I remember in cabinet, someone had asked me, Dr. Thompson, you know, do you think papaya leaf? I said, and I gave the answer question, I don't think that is true. And I had to go back and say, well, boy, that papaya leaf works. I was wrong. You know?
Dr. Thompson, interestingly, you said the papaya leaf is used for tenderizing meat, right?
The papaya leaf and the papaya. itself.
Well, this is what I'm gonna say. I know about the papaya, the young
Yes,
papaya.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You could use it as a tender, but I didn't know that the leaf. You could
Well,
use
you know,
as
it's
well.
strange, you know. Do you know plants? The active ingredients of certain substances could be sometimes in the roots, could be in the bark, it could be in the leaves, or it could be in the fruit or the flower of the plant. And some of them have different concentrations of different things. So, yes, we know that the fruit contains the papain and the green ones can be used in tenderizer, but the leaves and so forth would contain a certain amount too. You understand? It's not left out. You understand? The papain is not concentrated just in the fruit alone. You'd find different concentrations in different parts of the leaf. It's the same thing like with cannabis. Cannabis is in the flower buds, but in the leaves there's a smaller amount. In the roots, there's a very small amount there too. You know what I mean? So we find those things, the different concentration. But I'm talking about carpane, right? Which is and it's excellent. And so, do we recommend that people take it if they have mild? Why not? It's not going to harm you, and studies have shown it's not toxic, and so. And what they've recommended is not necessarily to boil it, is to steep it. Steeping is where you put it in hot water, right? And you allow it to come out, let it cool down, and then take out the leaf, and then drink that particular amount. Other people may do all sorts of things, crushing it and so forth.
I was just about to ask you about that because somebody recommended to me because I wasn't feeling well a couple of days ago, and they said use papaya leaf, and the instruction was to blend the leaf, at least squeeze, try and get the juice out of the leaf.
Yes.
Right. The cautionary said it's gonna be very bitter. You know, because I
Yes.
did take a piece of the leaf and before I did anything and bite it. It's pretty bitter.
Yes. No, and you know, there are different methods and so forth, and we have to standardize this. And really, it's more a matter of steeping it as opposed to boiling it. And the squeezing and so forth is fine, but you are also getting a lot of other green chlorophyll. And some people could be a little allergic and sensitive to the green stuff going into their mouth or their tongue, could cause a little bit of blistering and so, but it's not really that toxic, you know? But, you know, putting it, you know, if I have a spoonful of sugar and I put it in a small glass and I drink it, or I put it into a big glass full of water and I drink it, I'm still taking that spoonful of sugar. You know what I mean? So it's to take it in a manner that it isn't going to cause anything. I wouldn't go and bite the leaves and so forth. I wouldn't recommend that in that way, you know. But some people have tried different things, and it still works because you're getting that little spoonful of the carpane, you know, whether it is in a mug full of as a tea that's been steeped, or whether it's all in a teaspoonful alone from squeezing and crushing the plant, the leaf of the plant. Now, I have brought this up because dengue can somewhat get out of control. No doubt, there's the other public health issues around your house. Those barrels that you have, that people sent stuff at Christmas. Before, we used to have those cardboard barrels. Now we have the blue barrels, you know? And they're serving a purpose. We could collect water. They helped us a little bit in certain times, but you got to control them. You got to put a net over them so that things are not breeding inside them. That's important. Buckets, pans, plastic bottles are notorious. Plastic bottles in rivers, in streams, over banks are going to breed mosquitoes because water is going to get inside them and breed them. But I am saying this because we're now seeing dengue coming back into Europe, seeing cases in Italy and Spain. We're seeing cases in France, you know? This is because the climate has been changing and the mosquito, whereas it was confined more to the tropics, it's now spreading. Now, truthfully, long ago, mosquitoes used to be up in Europe, but, you know, with all sorts of housing, construction, and everything like that, they were virtually eliminated, but now they're coming back. So those folks who will be listening from the United States and so New York and you go down to Florida, but definitely people living in Florida, be careful about dengue. The mosquito in Florida and the southern part of the United States is a different mosquito. It's the Albopictus that's causing the problem. It's more of like a spotted, a tiger-like mosquito. You understand? It has stripes on it, like a tiger. Whereas our mosquito down here, the Aedes aegypti, you know, there are dozens of different types of mosquitoes. Not all of them are bad. Some actually just feed on the nectar of plants. You know, they don't want to suck your blood, but there are a number of mosquitoes that definitely want to suck your blood. And if somebody in your household has dengue, then watch out. 3 or 4 days later, you may be coming on in dengue too, because that same mosquito would bite that person with dengue, suck up the virus, and come and feed on you. And that's the means of spreading. We've learned a number of things about mosquitoes. You know, mosquitoes love to come out early in the morning and in the evening. Right? That's why when they used to spray in the evening. There was no point spraying at lunchtime, 1 o'clock. And so you have to spray more in the evening when the mosquitoes are really out. Feed them. And the mosquitoes love to feed around your ankles. Somehow or the other, they love to bite around your ankles. So, you know, protecting your ankles and so is important. Guess what? All of you with type O blood, the mosquitoes love you a little better, you know, than other type of blood too. And persons who may be obese, overweight, the mosquitoes also tend to like you too, you know? And, you know, I could go on and on, you know, but we've learned a lot about these particular things. So what are you going to do about protecting yourself, your family in relation to dengue? And I want to really encourage you that in the morning, go take a walk around the house. You know, the mosquitoes are funny, you know. They don't travel for miles to go and bite somebody. They don't need to. They'll hang around the household, one house to the next house and that sort of thing. So you look around your house and guess what? Peep over the fence and look at your neighbor's house too. If your neighbor has things that could harbor mosquitoes, those mosquitoes could come after you before going after the neighbor. So it's good, and it's good to have a good relationship with the neighbor, and you talk to the neighbor diplomatically. Don't say, get your damn bucket up. And so don't say that. I'm very sorry. You know, talk to them. Hey, you know, cases are coming with dengue, but we got to all work together, you know, and things like that. You got to use that diplomatic language, you know. But I am very much concerned about the risk of death in and around the region. There's been a lot of cases. Puerto Rico has a lot of cases. The BVI has cases. The Virgin Islands had cases. All America. I mean, and you know, it's no point even quoting the number of cases or deaths, because as like with COVID, one day is this, the next week is something else, right? I want to say something. There's a vaccine. There's a vaccine for dengue. But listen to this carefully. The vaccine should only be given to someone who has never had dengue before. I'm going to say this very carefully. There are 4 types of dengue. We discovered a 5th as well. 4 types of dengue. And if you catch one dengue, you are immune to that type 1 or type 2 or type 3 for the rest of your life. But if you are exposed to another type of dengue, it can make that second exposure worse than the dengue you had. And so we don't give vaccines to anybody who had dengue before, because the vaccine could make the dengue worse. You hear me say that? I'm saying don't take the dengue vaccine. You hear me say that? Huh? Don't take the dengue vaccine. I don't think it's recommended here in St. Vincent and Grenadines. There's some areas where dengue is so endemic, as we call it, that is always there. In certain parts of Panama, dengue is always there, all year round. Certain parts of Africa, Southeast Asia. You think we have it bad? Certain parts of Africa, certain parts of the Pacific have it so bad. It's all year round. But dengue is a funny virus that it cross-reacts with other dengue varieties, and guess what? It also cross-reacts with Zika. You know, luckily Zika is not rearing around, but Zika is so similar to dengue in the nature of the virus. It doesn't cause the same thing. The big problem with Zika is for pregnant women. It causes pregnant women to have a baby with a very small head. It causes women who are pregnant, it alters the embryo and the baby's development, and the baby is born with a very small head and mental retardation. It could also cause death. Serious problem. But the difference between Zika and dengue is that Zika is still, for most people, mild. Kamal, if you get Zika, it's no big deal. You get it and it's gone. But if you had a lady who was pregnant and she got Zika too, boy, watch out for that, what you call microcephaly, a baby coming out with a very small head. But dengue being the most common mosquito-borne illness in the world, I pointed out to you Latin America, I pointed out to you about Africa, I pointed out the Pacific and Latin America and the Caribbean. It's a serious illness. As I said, in terms of the vaccine, don't really recommend it. And we have to be very, very careful about it. And, but when you are exposed to one strain of the dengue, you're immune to that strain for the rest of your life. But if you catch another strain 2 years later, 3 years later, the antibodies, your body's reaction to this new strain of dengue can be more severe. you can go into the severe nature. And the reason is that your body's immune system gets tricked, thinking that the new virus, the new dengue virus, is the same as the one you've been exposed to before. And says, open, oh, come in, hello, come in. It's all right. And the virus can get in. And if the virus reaches all the way down to your bone marrow and your immune system, you could be messed up and start going towards severe dengue. It could mess up your platelets, these substances in your blood that help you stop clotting. So it's been, well, I was hoping for a couple of calls on this, haven't had any, I appreciate that. It sounds as if, well, everybody understands and understood what I am saying, and that you are going to be on your guard. You are going to be reserved. I think the main feature I am looking for is that all of us will, every year, dengue will come by. Maybe the same strain all the time. I've caught dengue, I'm sure, right? And, I will, might even be exposed to a second one. I think I've caught maybe a couple of them, mild. Remember, as I said, if you're in a country that's giving vaccines, I don't recommend that you take it. Anybody who's going to get the vaccine has to get a blood test first to check to see if they've been exposed to any of the 4 strains of dengue. And if it's negative for dengue 1, dengue 2, dengue 3, and dengue 4, yes, you could take the vaccine to protect you. But if you have had dengue 2, and the next, and you take the vaccine, which is like a mixture, could cause you problems. And it's against the law and protocol to give the vaccine to someone who, if a blood test comes back saying they've been exposed before, you cannot receive that vaccine. And because in St. Vincent, they could do the test, but I am saying I don't think they have the vaccine here. But if you have to go to another country where you're living, right, and they offer the vaccine, don't take it. Clearly, somebody in Canada who has to come down to the Caribbean, they could be persuaded to take the vaccine to protect them because they would not have been exposed in Canada before. You understand? Or somebody in England. But I am still recommending that you'll be very, very careful taking that particular vaccine. One thing I will say is that you have to be very aware of the symptoms that are showing that you're moving from mild, ordinary dengue fever to severe dengue fever. Remember what I said. These symptoms tend to start after your fever seems to drop. The fever dropping could give you the impression that you're getting better, but then you start to have persistent vomiting. Remember, persistent vomiting is 3 vomits in 24 hours. But if you're having 6, 7, 8, 9 vomits, in that day, then that's very persistent vomiting. If you start to have any shortness of breath, suggesting that your lungs may be filling up with fluid, because dengue causes fluid to leak into your belly and also your lungs. But we're more worried about the fluid leaking into your lungs because you start to get short of breath. And if you start to see bleeding from your lips, your gum, inside your urine, you go to the bathroom, to stool, and you notice some blood there, that's not nice. Or if you notice some patches of bleeding underneath your skin, that's not good. Those are some symptoms that you shouldn't have. Another one is if you start to have stomach pain, the pain that starts in your stomach, not just the vomiting. And so all these things are very severe, and you have to be very, very careful. Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't had any calls this evening, but I feel good that we've thoroughly discussed this thing about dengue. So whether you're in Florida, Texas, Louisiana, whether you're in Venezuela, Brazil, whether you are in any of the islands of the Caribbean, whether you're in Africa or the Pacific, be very careful, look out, and take caution, learn the early warning signs of dengue fever people may be exposed to, go into severe dengue. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A pleasant good night to you. All the best.
People's Pharmacy, for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown.